The Odyssey is a great movie. It's big, loud, it's epic, it's sci-fi, not mythology, unfortunately. I don't typically do reviews, but Nolan is one of my favorite directors, and The Odyssey is one of my favorite stories. So, I have thoughts. Nolan is a great filmmaker. I love when a director's work has a signature, undeniable personality, and a noticeable style. Every great filmmaker has such qualities. Look at the likes of Spielberg and Cameron. When you watch a piece of art, you can instantly tell it's theirs. And that is disappearing in movies these days. The downside to that, however, is Nolan is the wrong director for The Odyssey. He does most things right, but the key things are missing, and that's a shame. It's like in a relationship when one partner showers you with expensive gifts but does none of the basic things required for a relationship to work. Things like partnership, communication, honesty, et al. The gifts might be nice and flashy, but it's irrelevant because you're not getting the actual things that matter. But because I try to be objective, I will review this movie for what it is objectively, and then what I think it should be subjectively. Objectively, it is well shot, but is anyone surprised by that? The ending is also really good. It was gripping and epic, and Nolan really does stick the landing. In his own way, he uses practicality that bears semblance to early Greek theatre. Odysseus is partially well written, and I like the themes of emotional weight of the 10-year war at Troy. The suitors work quite well too. They are slimy and really get the rise out of you, especially Antinous. Robert does a tremendous job with it. The acting across board was pretty solid. Ironically, I felt Matt Damon's Odysseus was the weakest performer, but not for reasons relating to his acting chops. I'll address that bit a little further on, but mostly in a different video. Objectively, this movie should be a masterpiece if it didn't fall flat subjectively. Odyssey falls flat for me, not because it's not good, but because it's wrong. It doesn't invite the correct emotions or address the right questions. The dialogue is rather basic and not at all sophisticated. Words are spoken in very direct and on-the-nose ways, and that damages any feelings of grandeur. What I mean is, dialogue in mythology should make you feel small, like there's something out there bigger than you, like the people on your screen aren't of your world or your time zone. Nolan can achieve this with his big action sequences, but never his dialogue. The basic American accents were pretty hard for me to get past. Formal speak is simply superior. I suppose you don't have to speak formally, but doing so does raise your movie's immersion. I said earlier Nolan is the wrong director for mythology. That's because Nolan is fundamentally a pessimist. He tends to see the worst in humanity, and often tries to explain everything that is meant to feel above us away with human competence. He will not relinquish control to a higher power, even though it's just a movie, and it doesn't necessarily have to reflect his own life choices not to believe in God or gods. He would rather present this vague messaging that doesn't answer any of the questions it poses. He pretty much takes out aspects of the story that treats the gods as real. The gods aren't present. They are spoken about, but not present. He opts for leaving open to interpretation whether the gods were actually part of the story or just human fabrication. He doesn't let any characters actually interact with a god. That means instead of mythology, we get a stripped-down journey with interesting scientific existential questions. There's no feeling of magic or wonder or curiosity in the first 90+ minutes. There's, however, suspense and gritty practicality, making it feel more like a sci-fi. This brings me back to Matt Damon's performance. I thought he was one-dimensional, not because of him, but because of the very basic dialogue. The dialogue does very little to show Odysseus' wit and cunning. For a character that we know to be one of the most clever, witty, intelligent men in all of mythology, there's no real appreciation for the beauty of Odysseus' brain. The only times he does something smart, it has to do with battle or something Nolan can pack with loud spectacles. His relationship with his men is something that really sticks out to me. That chemistry and bond men who have fought and bled together is hardly there. They felt more like devices to move the plot forward rather than real men under Odysseus' command, loyal and ready to die for him. We don't actually know the men. They all have the same bland, paper-thin personalities. They don't even seem to love Odysseus either. We get no dialogue between the men and him that helps us feel Odysseus' pull as a leader through the feelings of the characters around him. The men might as well be mercenaries paid to accompany him to Troy. And that's just one example of several missed opportunities to endear the audience to Odysseus and make him more memorable long term. The film doesn't ever let Odysseus enjoy himself or use his charms in ways that also charm the audience to him. Matter of fact, I'm not sure Odysseus smiles or laughs once this entire 3-hour film. And that's probably because Nolan is great at a lot of things, but charming protagonists isn't one of them. Or even just any character besides the moody protagonist who is feeling the weight of the maybe terrible things he has to do. Not a bad trope in isolation. I mean, it works very well in sci-fis like Interstellar, but it's rather repetitive now. If you've seen one of Nolan's protagonists, you've seen them all, really. And the problem is it really doesn't work in this genre because it contradicts the complexities of Odysseus' prideful character. Okay, spoiler warning here. Nolan injects this theme of guilt and burden, and Odysseus not really wanting to return home because he is so guilt-ridden by his part in the Trojan War. And after building up all of this, Odysseus literally gets back home and becomes himself a Trojan horse. He locks up the suitors, takes away the ability to fight back, and plants himself amongst them in disguise. He then proceeds to slaughter them all, unarmed men and women, by the way. So in order to keep the epic conclusion of the actual story, Nolan now has to throw the theme of guilt he spent 2 hours preaching out the window, and have Odysseus literally commit the same heinous act. It's not coherent because Nolan's ideas just don't fit into this world. Ironically, this is the part of the story that he executes to perfection. You know, the part where the story does away with the gods and mythical figures and hones in on the ability of one strong man doing badass stuff. It's right up Nolan's alley, isn't it? Yes, the suitors and the maid deserved their punishment. They absolutely do. But Nolan presents this quote-unquote profound message of ruining the world by winning a fight in a backhanded manner. I believe the phrase the film uses is turning a fight into a hunting. Only to have Odysseus win back his home in very much the same manner, hunting the suitors like animals rather than fighting with honor. So what was the point? Honestly, there's more I would like to dissect, but let's just wrap this up in a nice little bow. For what it is, Chris Nolan's Odyssey is an enjoyable sci-fi fanfic of the poem. That's it. The writing is incoherent, dialogue average or below. It's tonally incorrect, but the spectacle does just enough for most people to not notice. There is actually a place for spectacle media, but I suspect that this movie will only be spoken about for that and will be forgotten when the dopamine hit is gone. I'm left thinking Nolan is, ironically, Odysseus in real life, too arrogant to give the material the interaction it actually deserves, and ends up making something that is a bit of a mess, but still not that bad, I suppose. His pride wouldn't let him execute the Odyssey the way it deserves to be executed. But beyond Odyssey, what is heartbreaking to me is this. It feels like movies from even beloved directors are now opting for spectacle over substance. That care filmmakers used to put into going beyond loud, flashy sequences and making well-rounded, genre-accurate, impactful movies is all but gone. It seems entertainment for my kind is going extinct, and I don't quite know how I feel about that. Anyway, The Odyssey is a solid 6 out of 10 for me, and as for rewatchability, I personally wouldn't want to sit through the first 2 hours of it again, but I suppose we'll see how it ages.
Is that it?
No, but I'll be in the Mind House if you care to join me.